In the meantime, a former governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, believes states should determine the minimum wage they can pay. The federal government and labor unions have been locked in negotiations over a new minimum wage for months. While labor insists on 250,000 naira, the government is offering 62,000 naira. On the other hand, governors say the earlier 60,000 naira offered to labor is unsustainable. But Fayemi is advocating a decentralized minimum wage negotiation, arguing that states should determine what they can pay, factoring in their peculiarities. Now joining us to discuss this is public affairs analyst Jide Ojo. Hello Jide, thank you for joining us at this time.
It's my pleasure. Barka da Sallah and
Barka da Sallah to you as well. All right, Jide, a former governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, believes that states should determine the minimum wage that they can pay. Do you share the same submission?
Of course I do. And I've advocated this on several media platforms, that you cannot bind states and local governments, as well as the organized private sector, by a fiat that is deemed to have been agreed to by the federal government. Obviously, the federal government has more resources, collects more IGR, and can afford to pay even over and above whatever minimum wage is agreed to. But you need to factor into consideration the peculiarities of each of the states. About a month ago, I wrote a column for This Day newspaper on Tuesday. And my position since then and now is that every state should be allowed to negotiate with their workers in a decentralized manner. After all, this is a federation. It's not an autocracy. It's not a unitary government that we have to, and that's why I also pick holes with what the National Assembly is trying to do, saying that there will be a clause you are going to save the money meant for state and local government because they cannot pay minimum wage. If you are not handling this issue with care, what it will result to is mass sack of workers. As it were, many states are not even recruiting new staff. And when you force them to agree to a minimum wage that is not affordable and sustainable to them, and you put a clause that if they don't pay, you withhold their FAC allocation, that in itself is ultra bias, is null and void. According to Supreme Court, when Obasanjo tried to do that by seizing the allocation of Lagos State local government fund, the Supreme Court said no tier of government can withhold the allocation of another tier. But assuming without considering that is even the position of law, you cannot then say that state governors should not sack workers if they have to pay the minimum wage. So the best way, a win-win situation, is to make sure that all of them have opportunity to negotiate directly with their workers. Let me shock you, Lagos State government budget for 2024 is 2 trillion plus. That of Rivers State is 800 billion. But that of Nasarawa State, which is the next door neighbor to Abuja here, is about 150 billion. So it tells you that they are not equally endowed. So why do you want to foster a national minimum wage?
Okay, Jide, but shouldn't this be an opportunity for, the state governors, or a push for them to actually begin to make their states work, especially for those, those state governors who do not contribute anything to the revenue?
Well, you may say that, but the reality that stares us in the face is that that's the more reason why we need restructuring. I just gave you the example of Nasarawa State, whose annual budget as of 2024 is about 150 billion. But did you know that Nasarawa State is called state of solid minerals because it has 33 to 34 solid minerals in commercial quantity. But the state government cannot mine those mineral resources because it is presumed that it belongs to the federal government. And that's why only the federal government has Ministry of Solid Mineral, and is the one that issues licenses, is the one that collects royalties, is the one that get the licensing fees. Whereas in a true democracy where there is fiscal federalism and resource control, a state like National State will be one of the richest states and will be able to pay workers even far above what Lagos may be paying. But ironically, you have hamstrung them by insisting that you don't want to let go the solid mineral in their state, which is also the case with the Niger Delta states. You are exploring oil and gas from their domain, but you are putting all the resources in federal purse, and you are not giving them a living allocation that will enable them to develop their state. So the whole thing smacks of the fact that there is a need for what is called review of the revenue allocation formula if you want to sincerely deal with this issue of minimum wage. Because if, for instance, the labor unions are asking for 250,000 minimum wage, who is going to pay them that? Zamfara State just started paying 30,000 minimum wage last month since 2019. Is it Zamfara State you are going to duty bound to say that it has to pay whatever new minimum
okay,
wages?
Jide, now talking about, if we're going to, nip the problem that comes with the minimum wage issue in the bud, obviously there have been previous adjustments, to the minimum wage in Nigeria. Now, how have the previous adjustments affected the economy and also the employment rates? Are there some lessons that can be learned from these past experiences?
Incidentally, you see, previous wage increase have never really improved the living standard of even the workers themselves. The reason being that this money is, the purchasing power of this money is already eroded by hyperinflation. The naira is already overdevalued, and the purchasing power parity of this money is next to nothing. So even if you give them 100,000 as minimum wage, by the time they go to the market, what they will purchase with that 100,000 is what they were purchasing with 30,000 just barely 2 years ago. So the lessons that have been learned is that rather than pushing for wage increase, rather give them what will make life easy for them. For instance, in those days of Latif Jakonde, there was housing scheme for different cadres of workers, and they have long time to pay for those accommodations.
Okay.
Where are they today? What about the loans to build, to buy cars, and even free health services, free education? Those are the kind of things that government should think about. Okay. Because it is those social services that workers spend the larger chunk of their salaries and allowances on. So if you bring those ones down, even if you are paying them the current minimum wage, it will be sufficient for them to cater for their needs.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jide Ojo, for joining us and speaking to us on this.
It's my pleasure. Do enjoy the rest of your celebration.
And you too.